Previous video, I mentioned that George Orwell, the author of 1984, was off by several years, and 42 to be exact, or 41, whatever I did the video. Anyway, there's been more evidence that we're living in a 1984 type of society. Not because we do have a big brother um, aiming to help us think or forcing us to think the way that he thinks. But now we have the media being part of the state. And what it's doing is that it's canceling all forms of dissent or information. Many of you have heard about the CBS story or 60-minute story that was supposed to air about, I think, ICE agents and people that are being sent to maybe El Salvador, I'm not sure. But the new owners now of CBS, I guess, if you can call them new owners, decided to cancel that story through one of the executives, who, of course, is now over 60 Minutes. And if you know the history of 60 Minutes, it is not only a news magazine program, but it also has interesting stories about life in this country and other countries, and really it gets down to some truths that need to be said. Well, according to these people who are now running the network, no. This prompted Nikki Glazer, comedian Nikki Glazer, to say that this joke in the Golden Globe Awards about CBS. And yes, at one time CBS was a network that people viewed as a standard, with Walter Cronkite, Everett Morrow, Dan Rather, until some people did not like him, and then all the way down to the current staff. And even though I don't know them, I really don't, but I just watch the news like everyone else and kind of know the trends because I'm also a freelance writer, so I understand the journalistic aspect of it. But I can say that censorship through media is not a good thing, not at all. Media is supposed to make people upset. It's supposed to make people bothered and irritated. And sometimes the stories are sensationalistic, and other times they're just under everyone's notice. You won't even notice them even lining bird cages way back when. There was a report many times through the LA Times, which I used to read a lot. I don't read as much anymore. That in the Herald Examiner, and they had interesting stories that made people uncomfortable. So uncomfortable that they complained about the coverage, the reporter, things like that. Now I can see if the story is not accurate, or it's not information, or it just says one side. Yes, people have a right to be angry. They have a right to be upset. They have a right to voice their displeasure. But at the same time, if it's true, all the sources have been vetted, and the editorial staff believes, yes, this is the go, then you're going to make people very uncomfortable. But even the Herald Examiner is no more, hasn't been that way for almost 40 years, and the LA Times is run by someone who looks out for other people, let's just say. It's not the journalistic hub like it used to be when I was reading it. But that just goes to show you that media in the last 40 years has changed, in which it used to be hard-hitting exposés, stories that cover the downtrodden, people that really need help, and what's a story about that, or stories about that situation. And now we find that stories are being censored by the ones who are controlling the media. In fact, that's one of the things you get out of 1984, that Big Brother would control the media. And of course, trust and belief, we're seeing that today in 2026. our big brother is in control of the media. If he doesn't like a certain news article or reporting, then they will just uh, arouse his ire, and that's it. They get talked about, or they get shunned by that one side that my friends belong to. I can just tell you that as a freelance writer myself, I wrote a story about a local politician, and even though I wrote the story as best I could, being professional as I am, I was somehow checked by the politician. They wanted to take a look at my interview with him, and of course, what turns out is that they found nothing wrong. The story was printed as I wrote it in the first place, and that was that. So I thought that would be the end of it. But in the days that I had Twitter, I was also followed by two bloggers, or a blogger who doesn't like that politician all that much, and therefore they decided to follow me. Now, I'm probably the farthest thing from being the cape wearer of any political party or anybody in general, but I would just say that they followed me because my name was on the byline, for one, and for two, I covered somebody that they did not particularly care for all that well, I suspect. Anyway, we got into an argument online. This was about the time of the pandemic, and of course the discussion was masks, right? I made a post about masks. They responded with their point of view, and therefore that was that. Now, trust and believe, I was coming off my stroke, and I didn't want, as doctors advised, no stress at all. So therefore, I had to remove these people, and find out the way Twitter has now shifted to a ideological thought channel. I decided to eliminate myself from Twitter as well. But I would just say that news media today, I mean, even though you try to be as accurate as you can, you try to follow those old professional attitudes as far as being accurate, asking the right questions, getting the story right, being truthful. There are individuals who would love for you to say the way that they want to say, or have their ears tickled to where, guess what, their beliefs and their political views are nothing but their political views and their beliefs, and that's all they care about. And you can forget the facts, you can forget asking questions, you can forget getting to know the people that you're interviewing, because they don't want to hear that, or they want to read that. They want to just know, hey, person bad, get them out, or person bad, don't talk about them at all. And I try to avoid that because, again, when I'm doing freelance writing, I always try to be professional. But again, the rest of the world does not think that way anymore, and that's a shame. It really is a shame. So we can just say that corporate media, or people who have an axe to grind of an ideological bent towards media, really are just not helping us find the truth or find the facts in all the cases that we are being reported or covered. For example, there may have been something in that story that CBS squashed that could have helped someone down the road, or help us to realize, okay, guess what, this story or this situation is not good. Much like in the case of the civil rights movements in the 1960s, when CBS was covering the civil rights movement, it was on NBC and ABC, and they were covering the sit-ins, the police brutality, fire hoses on protesters and all that. It made the nation wake up and see, guess what, this is not right. Something has to be done. People have to change. And I believe that's the reason why the news media is being corporate now, because they don't want a repeat of the 1960s, in which hearts and minds would change. But again, I digress. I would say, when I was in college, I had a professor who, by the time President Reagan struck down the fairness doctrine, which you had to present both sides, and I would say that at the time it seemed to be a pretty good policy. Many people don't like the fairness doctrine now, because when President Reagan signed it away, they felt it was a good thing. Now finally you can have your voice heard, you can finally be spoken. But the main thing about, to me, this is my philosophy about writing news, is that you always let the people decide, right? The people who read, digest news, they're the ones who should decide whether or not this is a positive thing or this thing is not so positive after all. But again, I think news media has stopped using that model for the longest time and letting people think for themselves. Always think about what Al Campanis, who used to be an executive for the Dodgers, said on that line way back when, in 1987, when he talked about people of this shade not having the capacities to be in baseball or run a baseball. He said, the typical things, right? So Ted Koppel, who very good journalist, or legendary journalist, give him a chance to backtrack that statement, and of course Mr. Campanis did not. So eventually the Dodgers took action and he was fired. Now, if Mr. Campanis were around today and he said the same things he said on that line not too long ago, but he said it in a more media friendly to him, no doubt those statements that would hurt someone of my shade or my ethnicity would have been laughed at, joked about, like, oh, that's so funny, or whatever. And that's not responsible news. Responsible news is something that Mr. Koppel did, gave Mr. Campanis a chance to ask the question, and then guess what? He wouldn't do it, or he backtracked on his. He didn't backtrack, but he just kept going with his statements and his beliefs. And again, 1984 attitude would insist that what Mr. Campanis said was very true. Big Brother thought it was true. He thinks it's true. Everyone else in the staff thinks it's true, and therefore it's there, and it's never really addressed. It's only the fact that the reaction is addressed, but not the reason why he said that or his beliefs. You can question them, but at the same time, that would not be the full story. So this is all about the times we're living in now. I mean, I would say the only way they would turn it around is that I believe these news organizations would have a self-imposed fairness doctrine, in which they are going to cover both sides of the story, but they're going to let the audience decide which side is right in the side of the story. And also you have inflammatory political commentators for each ideological side. And of course the ones who are inflammatory, the ones who make ridiculous statements, not verified, not fact-checked, but just throw them out there, because in the past you had to verify everything you said and whether or not it's true or not. Now we have gone to such a point in our history, our time, that if you say the most outrageous thing, it gets clicks, it gets likes, it gets viewerships, it gets ratings, but at the same time, is it fair or is it right? Check CNN if you ever wondered about that. But I would say, basically, news media in of itself is heading off a cliff with the direction it's taking now. And we need competent news media that, again, is mature enough to say both sides deserve a voice, both sides need to have the story told, and we're going to let the American people decide. Just simply saying America decides is not enough. You have to decide, and news media should always serve as the function to show us, present information to us, and at the same time let us think for ourselves. But again, that would be too much like right? Letting Americans in 2026 think for themselves. What a novel concept. Too bad no one's practicing it right now. So with that being said, I do want to thank you for watching this video. If you did like it, please don't forget to click the like button. If you want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe as well. Check the banner above to see what I'm doing with some of my written works. And again, drop a comment if you think the news media is just playing around with 1984 ideas instead of just actually reporting the news. But that being said, I do want to thank each and every one of you for watching. I know you're taking some minute time out to watch me ramble on, but I really appreciate your presence here. I really do. So, with that being said, I want to wish each and every one of you the best. And again, always in closing, have a good day, a good evening, a great week, and don't forget to take care.